Welcome to my stream. Today, we're calling it Neo Gnosis. It's going to be a question and answer based stream, so hopefully somebody will show up here and ask some questions while we're waiting. I am not a medical professional. Anything I say is intended as health advice. Any major changes you make to your diet or any other aspect of your lifestyle, something to check with a doctor with for enacting your own life. Furthermore, I'm not a financial advisor. Nothing I say is a recommendation for investment. Alright, it's been a while. We haven't streamed some time now. I'm going to have a sip of my tea here. But I just want to check in, see if there was still an audience here. What's up, Johnny? Thank you for being our first chatter. What's going on out there in the world? I'm just chilling. What's up, Rylan? My day's been outstanding. I've just been hanging out. How's your day? You subbed. Thank you for the subscription. I should thank you now. Okay. Thank you. You guys are in a mood today. Good to see you, though. I want to talk about here. Does anyone have any questions? Am I seeing what you're seeing? No, absolutely not. That's the beauty of what is the word? What is the word? But the cool thing is that literally no one is experiencing the same thing simultaneously. Privit Kakdela says, I feel self-control is the biggest issue, and I want to learn how to take control of life and do most things in the right direction, free from distraction. And that's definitely something that you could do, and it's something you should do, and it's actually something that doesn't have to take a lot of time. You know, change is not something that can be measured into the future. You know what I'm saying? So you're only existing at any given moment right now. That means that change happens the moment you think and decide that it should happen. And then you just do it. Dude, you look fake, all biblical and such. That's funny. Did I plant any vegetables today? Maybe some pineapples. Try to plant whatever I can instead of just, you know, eating. Is happiness an intrinsic thing or dependent on people or things we have? Well, happiness is dependent upon what you're willing to ignore. You know, if you want to like get really far outside yourself and, you know, delve out a few layers into society, right? Then you need to be able to not be attached to other people's actions. You know what I'm saying? And so happiness is intrinsic but you can make it more or less harder or easier on yourself by minimizing, you know, lost energy, you might say. Do I feel at peace? Yeah, I feel at peace. Noi, good to see you. Good morning. Naoki says, are you familiar with Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormons? Not super experienced, but maybe a little bit of experience. Just not zero. How to deal with loneliness. Well, I don't, I guess whatever I would probably say regarding how to deal with loneliness is just something that I would be theorizing, because I personally don't really get that lonely. I find that it's a dial that's within my own control on whether or not I'm going to be having interactions with other people. No matter where I am, even if it's in the middle of a major city or even out in the middle of the jungle, the internet kind of connects us all nowadays, right? And you know, that's like a secondary field of connection within society, right? But then you also have like the people around you. And, you know, if you want to have company, there's people out there that that want the same thing as you. So it's really just about what you decide. There's no loneliness. Like, separation is an illusion. So if you can become aware of that reality, right, that there really is no them and I, then you can make peace with whatever your situation is. But the real root of the problem of loneliness is that you're falling victim to desire, right? You want something that you don't have. And that doesn't necessarily go away just because you have company. It's just that that's the thing that you wanted. And as soon as you have it, you will just want something else, right? So if we're continuously like tracing back this feeling of loneliness, right? We've now followed it back to its more root emotion of desire, right? So the best thing to do then, if you really want to go to the core of it, is to embody acceptance and just become an observer of whatever's going on around you, and stop being attached to the outcome of your actions, right? Because what's action? Action is karma, right? So when you realize you actually have no control over the ripples that you give out in life, in your existence, right? That trying to control them is impossible. So the redundant way of minimizing that is to not make ripples to begin with. So let's see what we got here. Sorry, I was ignoring the chat while this. You guys, I'm a little rusty, so you'll have to bear with me. It's been, I think, 5 weeks, 6 weeks since we did a stream, so. Naoki says, what is the best passive form of income that requires the least amount of time and the greatest amount of return? Glad to see you back, by the way. The best passive form of income that requires the least amount of time for the greatest amount of return. Well, see, the thing is that that's kind of going to be the underlying problem there, right? Is that time, right? So if you're willing to give it enough time and you want to be passive, you could pretty much put your money anywhere, as long as you're getting compound interest. Because you really can't get small enough, and that's in both terms of vehicle size and being able to compound as fast as possible. But I don't want my first stream back after 5 weeks to be about finance, because it'll get my algorithm totally screwed up. We're not going to talk about that right now. Thank you, though, for the thoughtful question. And I would love to help you with that, but let's do it on another stream. I'm sure we can find something else to talk about on this one. Jonathan the Terrible says, can you give some life tips to a 23-year-old boy? 23-year-old boy. Well, you're pretty much a man by 23. I had done a lot of things by 23 myself personally, but what would I guess I would have to say the advice that I would give myself at 20, if I could at 23, would be plan for the best. Because when I was young, I used to always plan for the worst. And the worst never happened. And in many cases, the best did happen. Or at least good enough, right? And the good enough things that happened could have been even more good if I would have planned for success instead of just planning for what happens if everything goes wrong, right? So Just basically understand the power of focus, right? And your worst enemy is going to be the inability to lock in on one thing, right? So instead of drowning in opportunity, you're just accepting that there are certain things that you excel at, that you naturally gravitate to, and that you're naturally good at, and that you're meant to do. And there's some things that you're not. And just because you're interested in something doesn't mean that it's your thing, right? Because what we're looking for is that ikigai, right? We want what you're good at, right? We want what you're like, what you like to do, right? But we also want something that is good for the world, right? And that the world needs, right? And so that's where you find your ikigai, or as they say in yoga, like your dharma, right? The thing that you personally are meant to do. And when you're doing that thing, everything's going to always flow, because, you know what I'm saying, you're in your element. You just got to figure out what that element is, right? And it's okay if you don't want to pick nothing, but definitely don't pick anything that you don't like to do. Yogi says, what's true is it can feel nihilistic sometimes when you feel no emotional connection to anyone, like nobody understands you. But that's the whole point of you having the reality that is only you. You know what I'm saying? Nobody is having your experience. Even if we were sitting in the same room together, having the same conversation, you know what I'm saying? Like, what we're seeing and experiencing when we communicate is a completely different experience, right? So the whole point of the whole spiritual process, like if you want to boil everything down and forget about what we're actually trying to accomplish here, right? And it's a relationship with God, right? For lack of a better term. Like, God is a largely misunderstood concept, but it's something that we all have some type of concept of. So, right? Now, if you 100% know and understand that there is something more than you, which you are part of, right? That you have a higher self. Then you're never alone. Do you know what I'm saying? Because that voice in your head, the one that you talk with, right? That's not you. That's something you created, right? There's like a whole another dimension to you, right? Which is non-verbal. which just exists. The one that's listening to everything that's going on in your head, right? So when you can communicate thoroughly from the part of yourself, right, that doesn't use words, right, and you can communicate that energy towards the absolute surrender to the fact that there is something more than that. Then you won't feel alone. You'll feel that you're part of the truth that is, we are all one. You know. And said, true, but you can only pout so much from an empty cup. I mean, you know, if you truly empty the cup, then reality will be whatever is the best version for you from your state of awareness. You know what I'm saying? It'll just naturally happen. Butterfly says, are you Swedish? I am actually Swedish. According to the DNA files. Ted Binkley says, trust me, you were not talking about finance. Yeah, I'm not talking about finance. Hostess says, I learned about finance the hard way. Peace, love, and joy worth more than any money. Yeah, exactly. It's not, you know, it's not, it's like something, it's not rocket science, but it also can be as endlessly complicated as you want it to be. So when you say the question, original question was, what's the most, or what's the best way to make passive money? Like, you know, try to figure out what the smallest possible piece of something that you can get, and just this isn't a recommendation for investment, but sell putts on it, and that's it. Do it on the regular until you lose faith in it. Recker says, dude, try to focus on what you're talking about to help your conversation speed. It will help. Yeah, I'm a little bit rusty. I haven't done a stream in a while. We're biblical in the chat tonight. Let's see. Krivik Della says, are most of religions made up story? I mean, yeah, of course it's all made up story. I mean, look at the news. Like, you're actively getting fictional information, and it's being sold to you as truth, day to day, every day. So, now I'm not saying, you can be as conspiratorial with that or not as you want to be, but we have to say that some percent of what we're getting probably might not be true. So when we're dealing with anything that's came from has been written by man or created by man, or nowadays we have AI and everything else, like, you can't say anything is 100% not a story, right? Like, the only thing that's real is right now. So, yeah, you could safely say that. Leslie Byram says, God is real, and anybody that doubts hasn't had an experience with the Holy Spirit. And that's true. That's true. One interesting thing about spiritual connection is that it's not something that is subtle, right? Like, it definitely has attributes which make it unmistakable. You know what I'm saying? But you gotta relax and just let it do its thing. Or I guess you could go the other direction until you end up with the same results. It'll just be a lot less enjoyable. Carl says, so the joy you feel from spirituality, it compares to your previous career when you were happy with your previous career? That's a good question. I would say yes, it definitely does. It's not to say there wasn't good things there too, but it's like when you really want to break down, so what makes people follow my old career? Well, they're chasing dopamine, right? They're chasing oxytocin. They're chasing these endorphins and such that they get from experiencing a state of arousal, right? And through spirituality, and should I say alchemy practices, meditation and such, purification and such, right? That the actual result of success there is tremendously more intense than the results of success with like interaction with a woman, right? To keep it top level PG, right? So the main difference there is that women are a lot more obtainable than direct connection with the divine if you're super in your ego, right? So the thing is most people are in their ego. And if you're in your ego, then you're going to think that certain acts and certain stuff is the top of the top. Because that's the highest that you can perceive, right? But the moment that you have the smallest taste of interaction with the divine, you'll realize that the way that it will make you feel is far, far, far more intense than anything that you actually realize existed prior to that. And that's usually how most people become seekers, right? Is that at some point they experience that sensation and they're just unable to consider anything else in life a worthy goal other than to achieve that state again. Right? And so, there's a really weird line to walk there where, you're seeking for the right reasons. But it's also weird because it gives you the right reasons as well at the same time. So, yeah, I would say it's definitely. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that my past career was for sure unsustainable to some degree, or didn't have some effect on me and my psychology in a way that allowed for this to happen for me, right? But just in general, it is really hard to get to a place where you can mentally let go enough to let it happen. If you're still involved in any kind of schedule or life that's not completely flexible, right? Because it's all about just like letting go. And so that's why, like, the spiritual process it's like the game Snakes and Ladders, right? Like asceticism, minimalism, these type of things, that's what can launch anyone the fastest, because they just have to let go long enough to realize that they survive. You know what I'm saying? And that realization can take you super far. Brighter Storm says, there's a voice in my head. Damn, this is great. Atina says, greeting from Iran, from the heart of the war. And that is welcome. It's crazy that that's what our consciousness is doing. It's like bombing itself. Johnny B. Thank you, by the way, for the hundreds and all that, Johnny B. I think that was you. Synthetic Valentino Bomb says, "What's up, man? What's the topic?" Someone says my legal last name sounds more Spanish than Swedish. And that's a very interesting observation as well, because it is a Portuguese last name. But DNA uncovered a very different story. It's quite the scandal. So, it's a couple of things going on there. Ryder Storm says, Jesus writing, talking Swedish and such. Got a lot of Jesus comments. Let's see. Oh man, that's funny. Sorry guys, I'm catching up on the chat here. I'm looking for a topic. Noah Chamberlain has a good comment. It says, trying to become enlightened is the biggest roadblock to enlightenment and trying to figure everything out. That is true. That is true. It's true unless you want it bad enough, right? Because there's a tremendous power in devotion, right? And everything is God, right? Literally everything. The air that you breathe is God, right? So when you realize that everything is God, right, then you realize that whatever you do is worship, right? It's all about how you're doing it. So whatever it is that you do, you should do it in a way that it makes the experience that God is having through you as good as possible. And then balance that with the experience that everyone else that took part in that, or observed that, or was exposed to that in any way, that what that effect that had on their experiences, which are also an experience that God is having, right? Right, and when you realize that, there's nothing to seek, but rather a state to access, right? Where you're 100% part of something, whatever that is. Something that you're doing, it doesn't matter. It's all worship. So you gotta figure out how to lock in on whatever it is that you're best at. Right? And if that thing is seeking, then it accomplishes the mission just as much as being a master of basically anything. Synthetic Vaint Bond says, my question is, why is society always so sure of what we don't know or even understand completely? Whatever is it that we experience that seems unnatural, we don't even know what to call it exactly? That is a great question. And I believe that it's through a great amount of energy, right? Like somebody with a lot of power and with a lot of resources, right? Has logicked and reasoned that humanity needs to be controlled, right? We're too hard for the yard. We just can't do whatever we want to do, because what we want to do is gonna mess everything up or something, right? And it might. They might be right. I don't know. It's hard to say. You know what I'm saying? I don't have access to their information. But I think that by design, everything in the world of duality is always going to balance out no matter what, right? And so we can look at any given opinion of society as a whole, right, as something that's just a fleeting thought, right, over the course of infinity of the being that is humanity, right? And so we might be experiencing that from within inside the time dilation that is our own awareness, right? But in reality, it was just something that flickered by in the cosmic scheme of things. So we don't have to be so attached to our desires, right? Especially if those desires come from a place where we don't have control. And what we have control of is only ourself. You can only control you. You're the only one that has that privilege of driving your body here, right? So that's your job, is that you drive the body. But you can't let the things that you've created control the body, right? Ultimately, there is something which we call you, right, that has final say and control of your body, right? And so you should always be looking to uncover the greatest degree of reflection of that which created you in yourself at all times, and cultivate that. And the more that you cultivate that, no matter what it is that is you, you will be the best version of you by removing as much as possible from yourself, so that the underlying code that makes you possible can shine through. Herb Diaz says, what if I don't believe in books that have talking serpents? I can never believe that to be true. And you don't need to. You don't need to believe anything. in fact, creating any kind of thought within your head about what that is, right, is a product of your ego, right? You should be able to look at everything that is in your actual surroundings, no matter how grand or how bland that might be. The very best option is to simply go into nature and look at everything and really look at it and forget about whatever you read on the internet or in books or looked up on the AI software or whatever it is. Forget all that and just go into nature and like look at it without the names and the information, the facts, and just realize that it exists. That without even trying, it just takes over everything. What's that hair? I got a whisker hair in my teeth. When you realize that that's possible, that you look at your body, right? This is possible. Then you have to ask yourself what actually makes that possible. And you can't quote scientific facts instead of religious facts, because the science is just another religion, right? So if you can just let go of all your facts from all books, from everything, all the knowledge, right? And you can just look around and realize that this is it. This is the only game in town. Completely and totally real. You're experiencing this right now. Then you know everything you need to know. It'll just come to you. Vegan Doll says, you don't need books to find God, Herb. In fact, you'll never find it in there. You know, it's like we said earlier, it's like, it's devotion, right? It's surrender. It's the letting go, right? That's what these books teach. The thing is, it's like the Karate Kid. You know what I mean? He doesn't know why he's waxing cars until the time comes and he's already got the muscle memory to block the punches, right? But if the master told him that from the start, he wouldn't have learned it right. He wouldn't have rubbed with such, you know, drive to get it done. So, you know, it's one of those things. There's map readers and there's map followers, right? A lot of people read books and they'll quote back books and they'll, you know, some people might even take it another step further and they follow the rules of the books, the big ones, at least the main ones. But most people don't understand that these religions, right, these are spiritual technologies, right? These are a blueprint to awakening. And the words in the book that tell you, okay, do this or don't do this or whatever it is, right? That's not the recipe. The recipe is the story. You live like one of the characters, right? If you can model your life after one of the characters' lives that find God in the book, then you achieve that technology, right? You turn on that part of your connection, right? So these books are like secret manuals on how to do this stuff. Now, of course, they've been changed over time. Like, it's obvious, like, it's a big, a lot of control comes from there, but that's how it's actually done. But people don't tell you that. That's not the open way. They say, oh, you got to follow what the people in the book say. But it's not like, that's not the way. The way is that you act out the scene. You know what I mean? You live like Jesus. Not you just do what Jesus said. You know what I'm saying? If you live like Jesus, then you get to waken up and achieve the connection and all that. That's the technology. Right? You get the love of Christ. But it's not from just doing what he says. It's from doing as he does. Right? And that's a tough path to follow. You know what I mean? This is the same is true for all these main holy books. You could do the same for Buddhism. Right? Or as in the Tao and Taoism, they harmonize themselves with it, right? Rather than acting a certain out, or taking on a certain role in life, they retract their grip on it. They just let things flow, right? And so that's another way to do it. But you don't need anything. You can just say, I don't know. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And if you really mean that, without trying to meddle in things and just go with the flow, you will find out the truth very rapidly. Privik Kakdila says, you are better than 99% of religious scholars who are rigid. You seem more flexible and open to change. Well, yeah, because I'm not a religious scholar. I'm just a fool. Have you ever seen like tarot cards, like the fool walking off the edge of the cliff with the dog? Like, that symbology right there is showing a path, right, to spiritual awakening. In fact, all of the tarot cards, the major arcana cards, right, those are all depicting exactly that also. This is what I'm saying, like, these are different technologies, different ways to achieve that awakening. Right? Oh shit. One second. What was that second? guys. I had to check and see what the dog was doing. I'm like literally in the jungle right now. Like anything could just show up. Jaguar, puma, big ass snakes, howler monkeys. It's crazy. Ooh, it's hot as fuck too. Okay. So what were we talking about? Everything is God. Yes, I understand this concept. Nature around us has no faces. What we are made up of. Exactly. But there's a merger between the two. Right? Everything is conscious, right? Because it's all part of something, right? Which is projecting it. Right? But when there's something else as well in which creates our bodies, right? And we are the same, made of the same thing as well. It's matter, right? But this software that you've created that helps you make words so that you can talk to other people. That's not that. Do you see what I'm saying? So by letting go of this way of thinking, right? Adopting pure thought without the filter. That's a way to do it also. You see, you just let go of your thoughts. And the experience of doing that as well is one of those things where, like what we were talking about earlier, people get really super into sex and stuff like that because they're chasing this rush of endorphins or pleasure, whatever the goal is for them there, this surge of dopamine. But the surge that comes when you get back the power that's running this software that thinks that it exists, right? That feeling is substantially more intense, right? So it's really just important to experience it once, because once you experience it, then you'll figure it out. You just have to like let it happen. You know what I mean? It's not going to happen. Your body's wired to not do it when you're in a state of survival, or when you're angry, or when, you know, you're sexually frustrated, or, you know, that you're really super preoccupied about anything. It wants to do it when you're chilling, so that you can go into transformation mode. It's not something that like happen, like the change mentally can happen instantly, but your body has to go through changes as well to accommodate this insight. So your body doesn't want to do it when you're super worried about something. You know, you got to figure out how to just chill. Just be like, this is okay. Like, whatever is going on right now, I'm just here. Maybe I'll stretch and like get to know my body in some kind of new way. Right? Like, okay, it's just me and my body. That's it. Whatever, there's some differentiation between there, but ultimately we have to say whoever we are is the one that's in control of our body, right? So, explore yourself in a way that you've not done before. Figure out exactly what's possible with your own hardware. Optimize. That's another way to do it. That's what they call yoga. Or it's one of the aspects of yoga anyways. There's many different paths to getting the taste. Once you get the taste and you get the connection, then you'll know everything that you need to know innately. You won't need a list of rules to follow to be a good person. You will start gaining so much pleasure from doing things which you feel passionately are helpful for anyone or anything. And you will get so much joy from that you'll just do it naturally. Everything that you do will just start coming from that energy, right? It won't be like, it's not like, oh, you should go and do it, and doing it is going to be like your redemption or your path to heaven or whatever. It's the joy of doing it. You know what I'm saying? There's so many different paths, but you need to focus on anything which brings you incredible joy, right? And if that thing can be something that is good for society, or that society as a whole, it's not hurting anybody, you know what I'm saying? Then you are creating the conditions to where you're standing out to that which you are part of, right? Because that's the difference between what people call God and you, is that you have a limited awareness. You are aware only of what your body is experiencing, right? You're feeling everything through this interface of your body. Even if you have a spiritual experience, you're feeling it in this super intense way in your central nervous system, right? And the capability, like most people are wired, right, to experience this sensation of arousal, right, in their reproductive organs, right? That's how everyone's wired. And that's all those nerves are wired back into like this sacral bone in your back. There's a bundle of nerves in there, right? The base of your spine. And that is what's primarily responsible for what you experience through intercourse, right? But the same state of arousal is able to be experienced in much larger parts of your nervous system, like your spine, or any segment of your brain, or your entire brain as a whole, right? And not only is it possible, but it's what your body's made to do. This is like what you're really supposed to be able to have access to within your body, right? And we don't do it because it feels so good, but it does feel so good. It feels like whatever the magnitude is, if you want to count neurons in any part of your body, right? Like for sure, whatever you can experience in your brain is going to be more intense than whatever you can experience in your lower body. It's like, it's your brain. And it's also, not only is it wired to be able to do this, but it doing this has an effect, right? It completely will change your DNA. Like it's like that, right? And it's been described in so many different ways, right? Like all these different segments of your brain and different, nerve plexuses within your body, they're all capable of they all like have their own controller, you know what I'm saying, or their own flavor, their own personality, right? And so this is why people in certain religions and things, or, like in Hinduism, they might have a god for every different one of them. In other religions, they might just call it a virtue. You know what I'm saying? Or a sin. Right? And there's always a counter opposite to the sin and the virtue. And that's also correlates to some area of your body. And so embodying these virtues and avoiding these sins and things, or as like other people put it, like more pagan religions or modern day Hinduism, where there's many gods. And each god represents those things. So worshiping that god is your psychological maneuvering within that complex of virtue and vice. You see what I'm saying? These are controls on your actual physical self, your body, right? You have huge capabilities that you normally don't access. You have your thyroid, you have your thymus, right? Obviously your kidneys, your testicles, your whole gut is capable of producing huge serotonin, but all of these things are the strongest things that can be accessed by you. There is no drugs, there's no medicines, there's no other things that can be ever as good as your own body. That's why they call it spiritual alchemy, like chemistry, right? Because you're learning to take more conscious control over your processes, which are normally, they all these glands and things have their basic everyday thing that they do autonomously. But to take control of these different plexuses and things, and to turn it up, that's what changes you, right? And all of the changes are for the better, but they don't always seem like that if they're not aligned, you know what I'm saying? So that one standout thing is going to throw the whole system off regarding your virtues and your vices, right? And this is all, like I said, it's just spiritual technology. They've got hundreds of different systems for this. But nobody really explains it like I just explained it. You know what I'm saying? Like the Hindu call them tantras. It's like a meditation. It's a way of making something happen, but knowing the science behind whatever it is that you're seeking or worse yet, some fictional stories that somebody wrote as like an analogy, then you can't really actually do it. You just have to there's just no way to there's no way to fake it. You got to embody it. Host of the Rose says, I'm finding it really difficult to believe that there's a God. I've struggled with addiction for over 20 years, and I'm 10 days fully sober. It's used to believe there was a higher power, but now I just don't think so. Well, 10 days in is definitely a really good number. Like, that's enough to run it. Like, you could totally get free or whatever it is. You've already gotten past the hard part, right? But the truth is like, you don't need to know right now, Host of the Rose. Like, you're reflecting on life and you're kind of on a downer still because you're chemically, off, and you're questioning things. And that's good, right? You're asking the question. You're conscious of it as a possibility enough to say, I don't think so, right? But that's the gateway drug to the opposite of that. Is that if you think about it enough, you might come to a different conclusion. It's one of those things. But overcoming addiction is definitely one of the ways that people do it as well. So just keep it going. Maybe something will happen. You never know. The most powerful thing that you can do whether you believe in God or not, is that you can think about it. If you can separate yourself from the voice in your head that talks when you think, right? The dictator, right? And you realize that you're actually the one that's listening, not the one that's talking. You might get some perspective on the situation that you are currently lacking. And it's not your fault you're lacking, but it's just, this is the experience that you're having. Butterfly says, do you regret your ex-job career? I don't think you spread a lot of negative energy to the human race, seeking for something unachievable. Well, it's not really that I'm seeking, but the thing is that I have asked myself why I would have suddenly received such insights from my position within the social structure of humanity, right? As something that could be a mistake, right? Because as weird as it is and as contradictory as it is to basically like every religion, the cold humor and logical acuteness of the fact that somebody with a very specific following in the world suddenly has anything to say about God on the internet. So, as I mentioned earlier, the beauty of duality, right, which is what this world is based on, is that balance is always achieved one way or another, right? So, yeah, I do think that there was some negative energy spread to the human race by my past. But I also see the poetic irony that it's also the main reason why anyone has listened to what I've had to say for the last few years here on YouTube. It's not a lot of people, but it's definitely enough. So the point is not lost. You see what I'm saying? You really just have to accept that there are higher forces at play, you know, and we just stay humble and we just stay flexible and we just let things happen and balance is achieved. Carl says, how did your previous career affect you psychologically, mentally, physically, emotionally? Definitely there was a lot of physical trauma, as weird as that might sound, but my body has definitely needed a lot of TLC after doing that job for, you know, however many, over a decade, years. So it's again one of those things where you don't need to be seeking so much as you just need to be, or you don't need to know what you're seeking. You just need to be seeking something. You know what I'm saying? And this is another reason why another path. This is like the path of Job, right? Like I told you, each character in the Bible, for example, shows you a path. It's like same as they show you in tarot cards. It's the witchy way. It's that all those cards are a path, right? They represent that, right? All the astrology symbols, they all represent a path, right? There's so many paths. And one of those paths, right, is the path of Job, right? So this is why a lot of people find spiritual realization when they're really sick. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, they go one of two directions where they seek really, really, really hard to try to fix what's wrong with them, right? They put all their energy into healing themselves. Or they surrender and they give up on life. And they just accept their mortality, right? And those represent paths. You see what I'm saying? There's many, but it's anything that you do wholeheartedly with absolute single-pointed focus. Like that is, you are 100% immersed into that thing. It has 100% of your attention to the point that there is no requirement for the verbal software in your head. That you're 100% in the flow state. You don't even know how you're doing it, but you're doing it. It's completely wired into you. You're operating from that level of what you really are. You see what I'm saying? Carl said, how did you oh wait, that's the one I just did. Sorry, guys. Gold White Dragon says, what is humanity's purpose? To experience. That's it. You're just creating experiences for God. And when we say God, what if we're going to define God? God cannot be named. There is no name for God, right? If we can try to define it, just as a fun pastime. This is basically what led to like every religion ever, right? We're trying to define God. And here's the difference between God and everything else. All right? And through understanding the difference between God and everything else, we can finally try to derive the definition of God within our minds, right? Is that everything is aware of something, right? Which is aware, or maybe it's not. I don't know. Like a rock, you could be, it exists, right? Rock doesn't have consciousness, right? But tree does. You do. What differentiates you from a tree or a rock, right? And it's awareness. So that you and the tree are aware, the rock is not, right? But what differentiates you from God? You are aware of what you are aware of, and God is aware of everything. You see what I'm saying? So how do you navigate through life virtuously? You understand that one single concept that I just said. Whatever you are experiencing is what you are experiencing, and that is something that is your gift to God. Not everyone's giving the same gift to God. We're all each building our own personal little gift for God, which is our life. The experience of our life, right? And so your job, your purpose is to make that experience as good as possible while not creating negative ones for all the other people that are doing the same thing as you are. So we're all creating experience for God, right? That's an interactive experience where God's going to experience everything from every different possible state of awareness all simultaneously as one, right? So if you want to move through life without understanding anything else about the subject at all, you just accept that. Because you won't want to do anything that makes anyone else's experience worse. In fact, you will dramatically want to make other people's experiences better. And at the same time, you will want to make your experience just as good as possible, right? And this is something you can actually do in the present all the time. You don't need to like make huge plans about it. You don't need no money to do it. You don't need nothing that you don't got. You just do it. And whether you succeed or not, right? Just understand the underlying concept, which we just discussed, right? And you're going to be blessed. That's it. You're going to be in alignment. You're going to be in harmony. However you want to say it. They have it for every different thing. You're going to be, you're going to feel God's love. You're going to experience it yourself, right? In like a way that you can't even, I don't want to ruin the surprise for you. And that's it. You're like a director of a movie, of like a 3D movie, right? And you're an actor in everyone else's movie. And we're all just doing this thing. It's like, you know. So, you know, that's what basically karma's all about. But there's all kinds of ways that they try to tell you about that. Some people describe it as you're going to get into heaven, you're going to get into hell. But reincarnation makes this world that we're in right now heaven or hell. Because if you're going to keep occurring within this, you're going to keep reoccurring within the very thing that you helped create when you were here. You see what I'm saying? So if you want to achieve the highest of the highest of the highest level of consciousness, then you realize that. Right? And you operate from that pretense. You try to be as good of an actor as possible in the story. And in the one that you're directing yourself, you try to make that one as cool as possible too. You know? And the more the story, the more better that you do that, the more consciousness you'll be given. Right? Because you can't, that's the keys to the city. Right? Because you can't fake it. Because you know, because it's you. You have to fucking embody it. Like, know 100% who you are. Know you completely. Whatever's right and wrong in your world, in your mind, of what you're gonna, your personal code, you embody that 100%. Or that's obviously reaching for the stars, but that's the ultimate goal, is you just try to do whatever it is 100%. Infinite Perspective says, Bruce, good to see you back again. Was thinking about you today, and oddly enough, there you have it. It works like that. Infinite Perspective says, how were your adventures? Man, it was good. I had a lot of quiet time, a lot of time to think. I still haven't really come to a major conclusion. I'm kind of more or less leaning on the idea that the streams offer a certain line of thinking that I don't really access on my lonesome. So I'm thinking about continuing the streaming thing again. I'm not 100% sure, but I did want to check in with everyone and see how it went. It had been a while, and I had some new insights recently, which I suppose I've not shared, or in some way I have shared during this stream, but it's kind of hidden into the message just because it's the underlying thing which I'm thinking about while I am answering these questions. So I got like a secondary super secret thing going on in the back of my head. And I'm also trying to answer questions. So I'm not sure about the streaming thing though, if I'm gonna keep doing it or not, because there's something I like about just putting the phone down and not having any reason to pick it up. So it's kind of cool. It's hard to say what to do. Michael Johnson says, let me guess, Costa Rica. It's true. It's true. I am Costa Rican. Is too much of a good thing a bad thing? Possibly, yes. Definitely, almost definitely, in fact. Because there's very few things with it that we can truly call like laws of the universe, right? Laws of nature, or whatever. But among that short list, right, is balance, right? Everything is seeking balance. Otherwise, it would all just fly apart. There would be no way for any kind of predictable system of any sort to even vaguely exist, right? So we have this concept of polarity, this negative and positive, right? Masculine and feminine, this lightness and darkness, right? Good and evil, big and small. You know, we have this rule of duality. And if we know that duality leads to balance, then we can apply this to literally everything across the board, blanket application, right? And anything that you pull out of balance is going to create effects when that balance is achieved, right? There's going to be a correction. And so it's going to be all of a sudden that which could have been chill and good is like, it's waving, right? And so, you know, you have to know your own threshold for riding those waves, right? And in some cases, you know, people are looking at life through such a short span of time, right? Which is not necessarily a bad thing because we are only in the present, right? But a ripple could be more than their projected lifespan. You know what I'm saying? So it's good to try to keep everything in moderation, even moderation, right? Because you know, we don't need to make waves, right? See, just this says, I've been dealing with costochondritis for a long time, haven't responded positively to any treatment. Any suggestions? You know, I don't know what that is, to be honest. But if you want to tell me what it is, I could do my best. I'm always here to, let's see. Synthetic covalent bond says, we only exist in the linear, even though we were born out of a sleep state. The universe is a conscious mind in itself. Wait, I agree with the second part of that 100%. Let me read this again. We only exist in the linear. I don't think I agree with that. I do get it. Like, we're born out of a sleep state. Or we can agree on that, more or less. That's a good way to put it. And the universe is a conscious mind in itself. Yes, totally, for sure. On board with that. But the idea that we would exist only in the linear is a little bit, doesn't strike true to me. See, so we could make that argument for sure, but the thing is that you have to then underestimate the infinite, right? And that the fact is that you don't know what you don't know. So if you would be existing on like a quantum level, right, you would have to be unaware of that quantumness in order for the quantumness to work, right? Otherwise, you access multi-dimensional, multi-universal intelligence. And that would just be crazy, right? So, there's always the eternal struggle is within spirituality. It's the everlasting thing. It's like, what do you reach for? Do you reach for the microcosm or do you reach for the macrocosm? Right? Do you reach for the universe? What about what's beyond the universe? Do you reach for the solar system? Do you reach for the sun and the moon? Or do you reach for the whole universe? Or do you reach for the multiverse? Right? Or do you embrace the thing that's closest to you? Right? Do you go into the body, into the earth itself? Do you dive into the material aspect of it all, right? So that's the eternal question. Which one of those things do we do? Because with that which is infinitely big there can be that which is infinitely small. And what's more relevant to us? It's a good question. So I think the answer to that question is, we need to just know our role and try to bridge that gap, right? Create an experience for that which is incomprehendibly big. When I say big, I mean that in a multi-dimensional, complete, no concept of comparison kind of way, to infinitely small, right? And that you exist somewhere in between that. And that if you didn't, you wouldn't exist at all. So simply by embracing whatever it is that you do, that you serve that purpose, whether you like it or not. And that's pretty nihilistic also. So let's just move on from that topic. Okay, so wait, there's some other good questions. Let me just grab a cord, you guys, because I'm about to run out of batteries. Give me a moment. if I can create a situation here. Oh shit, I grabbed the wrong fucking cord. 1 second. There we go. Oh shit, it's still not working. You guys, I might. Oh, there it is. It's working. It wants us to continue apparently. Let's see. There it is. That easy. Just go with the flow. You know, if you call it reading the signs, people will think you're crazy or call you woo-woo, right? But if you call it the path of least resistance, right? Or going with the flow, suddenly everyone gets it. So just try to go with the flow. You don't have to resist. All right, you guys, I'm putting you on a tripod here. Give me a moment. Work this out. And then we'll pick back up at point 2831's question. The device. Okay. We're back. 1 second. Might as well get all of my delay in at once. Some ambiance, a little smellification, anti-mosquito copal action. And we're back to the conversation. I kind of like it. Tonight's actually been a pretty good, it's I'm a little in slow motion, but we've been having good questions. So you're supporting my previous conclusion that these streams are not so much about me teaching anyone as it is about everyone else teaching me. That I'm learning through your questions, because I normally probably wouldn't think of a lot of these questions, because most of the time I'm trying not to think at all. So point 2831 says, have you ever had experience with bad energy exchange during your former profession? As a woman, I stayed a virgin by choice until last year. I was 27. I literally received so much bad energy from that. Yeah, you know, that can definitely happen. You know, I definitely did encounter it here and there, but I had already previously to going into the industry, because of other places that I hung out for a while, developed somewhat of an energetic shield, right? And going into the industry and having that pre-existing experience really allowed me to, without even realizing what I was doing, just completely subconsciously, really build that shield up in a way that it's not as much of an issue for me. But the main function in my experience of creating an energetic shield from somebody is through something that we discussed earlier as well, is desire, right? And it's when you say, oh, well, duh, yeah, desire. That's, of course, that's going to be a situation when you're talking about what we're talking about right now. But desire goes way deeper than that, right? It's the underlying expression of desire, right, is always attachment. So it's not necessarily, though, attachment to that person. It could be attachment to anything. Like, for example, very common, especially if you waited till 26 to lose your virginity, I would imagine this to be fairly easy to predict, but that there would have been some type of attachment to what you thought the experience was going to be like. Like, you wanted a certain experience, or you had some preconceived notion of what the experience would be like. You waited, and when it actually came, it was nothing like what you had built up in your mind. This is just me all just making assumptions. But you know, if we don't have an attachment to an outcome, and that we just experience everything wholeheartedly instead of through the filter of the mind, right, then what that does is it basically like shifts your aura into force field mode. Now, whether or not that actually will work in that specific type of encounter, but it works really good in most of life. Now, in the context of what we're talking about, like, for example, you lost your virginity, I wouldn't really see any realistic way of your aura, no matter how strong it was, resisting an energy exchange there, right? So, give it time and it'll, work itself out. Sometimes it can do it really rapidly if you spend enough time facing the shadow and really digesting it from from a direction of like understanding it fully and processing what you learned more so than the energetic imprints that are left on you, right? And then it can be really fast or fast-ish. But spiritually, we all have to acknowledge our own shadow, right? If we really want to integrate everything else. It'll give you a taste of the truth. But for that truth to flow unimpededly through you, you have to face the darkness within yourself. You have to put to rest the lies that you tell yourself. It doesn't have to be anything you've ever shared with anyone. You know the truth of your life. You know every moment of every day of everything you're having. You felt every emotion. You knew when you were angry. You knew when you were sad. You knew when you were horny. You knew when you were wrong. You know what I mean? Like, you've known all the secret. You are the only one that's completely been aware within you. Nobody else really knows the darkness inside you the way that you do. What you thought during any given experience within your life. Right? But when you fully accept those things as experiences, right? And you process the value of the experience to the maximum capacity, right? You remove the blockage of that queue of things that is waiting to be processed. You know what I'm saying? Like, you remove a block. So, this is one of my issues with like a lot of mainstream spiritual teachers and stuff, is that they're always trying to teach people to manifest whatever you want and find happiness, find peace, love and light and all this stuff. And these are all things that you can experience, right? But if you want to like experience them at will, not just randomly, you have to integrate the shadow. So, everything is a sage if you let it be. You know what I mean? Like, nothing is a coincidence. Things are not just happening at random. Like, there's a storyline. You gotta get your lines right. You know what I'm saying? And if you do, then, the good part is coming, and the bad parts is what makes the good part seem good. You see what I'm saying? If you were just born with it all, you would be on the opposite side. Everything that you want in life, everything you ever wanted to manifest, or all your dreams come true. You were born with those same dreams. You wouldn't appreciate them at all if you got them. because it would be something you would be used to. You know what I mean? It's like me, like people get so excited about the things that I used to do on camera. But for me, it's like, you know, it's like, it's just a painting or something that I'm gonna make that day. Like it's not, it's like I want to do the very best. I want to enjoy myself while I do it, all that. But like the contrast is not there because it's normal for me. And it was the same thing with everything, right? You only get to enjoy any good thing in life because of the lacking of it before, or experiencing something that was less good than it, even if you want to be really super positive. Instead of saying, okay, this was bad, this was good, you say this was good, but this was more good. You know what I'm saying? And like be conscious about it, be aware of it, embody God. God's definition that we defined earlier is an all-encompassing state of awareness, that which is aware of everything simultaneously all at once. Right? That's my definition of God. So, you know, it's the law of duality. Only one thing can be experienced in contrast to its opposite. Big defines small. Long defines short. You know, good defines bad. Hot defines cold. Like nothing can exist without the opposite. So the thought that we're somehow going to make everything all good is, you know what I'm saying? You have to be good with all, not want it to all be good. Be good with what it is. Do everything that you can do within your three-dimensional, you know, and even fourth-dimensional reach. Make shit happen for the better. Make it a good experience. Make it a good experience for everyone around you. But don't, you know, think that there's supposed to be some specific outcome, because the whole thing wasn't made to win. Like, you don't create a dimension where everything has to fucking eat each other. Let me say that again clean so I can cut out the short. They don't create a dimension where everything has to eat each other and is subject to time and aging and, you know, light and dark half the time. Everything's, you know, has to give birth to each other. Like, it's just this crazy whole thing, right? You can't think that was ever meant to be all good. Like, it's duality. You know, you accept it. You know what I'm saying? You see that it's balanced, and you stop trying to control things which either don't exist or, you know, you definitely don't control. Gorelli, it says, how do people do evil things yet get away with it? Well, the thing is like, you're assuming that's an assumption. You know what I'm saying? Just because someone escapes the laws of man doesn't mean that they're going to escape the laws of the universe. You know what I'm saying? Like, I personally have had some experiences with reincarnation. And I will tell you that everything is accounted for. So, you ain't getting away with shit. Point 2831 says the sacrum bone in your lower back that cannot be broken. I didn't know that. That sounds cool though. Synthetic covalent bond says, I would argue that our conscious provides a greater experiences than we do here in the linear. Maybe when we permanently sleep, we finally wake up. You know, I don't think that there's actually a separation between it. I don't think that it's like, oh, you go to sleep and you wake up. I think that it's more like you never left. Like you didn't go to sleep. You don't sleep. You were there. You were 100% locked in, and plus hella others more than you can comprehend all the time, every moment of every piece of existence. Right? Like you're wired into the mainframe. Just like, right? And these versions of reality are just like endless, right? And you know, it's basically impossible to comprehend from a state where we are obviously experiencing a limited state of awareness, right? For the to be a little repetitive. But don't assume that you will even be aware of the change. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like you matter right now in this moment. You are doing whatever you're doing. You're a possibility within the grand scheme of everything that was worth pursuing in form of experience, right? That's what you got to focus on. You know, to simply clear your mind can put you in a state of energetic feeling that so far exceeds what most people would constitute as feeling good, right? And you know, like, obviously, like, I come from a place where I know very well that people are chasing physical feelings quite seriously. You know what I'm saying? Like, you would say that the closest thing to meditation that most people do, if we're talking people in the billions of people, you know what I mean? Like, watching what I used to do was the closest thing to meditation that most of those people ever did. That have, of the grand total of people that have seen me in life, or an image of me, video or whatever else, for the vast majority of them, the closest thing they ever did to meditation was what they were doing while they were watching what I used to do. So, you know, people are wired to be able to experience total bliss. It's just that they're so blindsided and focused on the greatest thing which they've experienced, and society doesn't explain to them that there's something way, way, way greater than that which they can experience, which that is counterintuitive to, right? And so for me personally, it's pretty ironic because of my life, what it was, and what it is now. Do you see what I'm saying? Ethos says, bro is not here to answer questions. That's fine. Synthetic Covenant Mod says, my thoughts have dropped within the chat before. I have reached different conclusions based upon things that you say, so I apologize, but I am listening. I'm happy to have you again here too. You've been a great part of the chat, so I'm glad that you're back. And that's what we're doing still. So thank you for the acknowledgement. You know, the big secret is like the microcosm, right? So we're here, we've been talking about stuff for a few years now. We're raising our consciousness, right? But to what end, right? So at some point, you got to say, now. At some point, you got to say, my consciousness is stable. You know what I mean? And this is probably, if your life ends up mirroring the way that mine has been anymore, it's going to be a series of attempts where you're going to increase your consciousness, and then you're going to go and try to apply that in the world. And I hope that you succeed right out the gate. But for me personally, I find that it's one of the greatest deceptions that my ego is capable of in convincing me that I'm ready to do that. It has learned to play reverse psychology. It just gets real quiet so that I think that I'm ready to go back into the world and bring what I learned. And then you get there and it starts creeping back into, you start noticing the shift within the vibe. And this is why historically we have a lot of religious schools and whatnot where they retreat into like a monastery or something, and they're only around other people trying to do the same thing. Or they go into the forest or the woods and into nature, wherever, and they go and they live in harmony with that, right? But the final stretch, at least in my view, or where the way I perceive it, you know, happens right in the real world. You do whatever it is that you do, and nothing disrupts you. Nothing takes you off of that level of connection where you're operating smoothly in the way that you're meant to, right? And that's pretty much that. You know what I'm saying? That happens right here. That happens right here in our own body. Suddenly you turn it, you go the full circle, you expand it out, and it comes right back to you. You know what I'm saying? To where you realize that you can only do what you can do. And you just optimize. But a really important part of that is to realize that you have been misled. And there's a lot of forces in this world that has been put into place due to this law of polarity. You know what I'm saying? Like, to try to stop you from understanding or being able to do what it is that we're talking about, right? Spiritual alchemy. And no one's like, oh, it would be great if everyone was just super low vibes and whatever, da 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 da. No one thinks that. It's just that people trying to do anything creates the opposite effect. So the path to hell is truly paved in good intentions. Because everyone thinks they're a do-gooder. Everyone thinks they're trying to do the right thing. Everyone's got their reasons for stuff. But in general, doing things yield unpredictable results, other than the fact that every action will have an equal and opposite reaction, right? A law. So, stop doing shit. Try not to do nothing. Fucking lock in, but lock into you. You know, it's like logic and reasoning, optimize first. Like, the gains that come from optimization of the self will always outperform optimization of the situation. You see what I'm saying? Like, you don't really have as much control over your situation as you think that you do. You are actually successfully riding a wave, right? And so if you come full circle, you achieve oneness with all things, then the logical counter-intuition that brings balance to you is to focus it inward into yourself. You know what I'm saying? To optimize yourself so that you could operate to the highest capacity within your world. And that's going to go on and on and on. Time's not going to be as much of an issue. You know what I'm saying? You'll be able to work everything from a way different perspective. But it's stages. And remember that everything is going to have an equal and opposite reaction. The deeper into one side of the spiritual realm that you're going to go is going to set the bar for how much of the other side that you're going to have to confront. So, you know what I'm saying? It's all balance, right? And if you're trying to do it all right now, right here, right in this life, you got to be ready for some like pretty crazy stuff to happen, and you got to be real detached from the outcome of that. Because if you invite the final balancing act, then you're going to get what you ask for. Adam Menke says, I have 9 senses, don't speak to me because I am made out of 7 parts of our angels. Okay. Well, that's a lot. How did you get rid of all the bad energies from this industry? Well, I took about a year of like celibacy. And that was a big realization as well too, because it goes right back into what I'm trying to say. Is like a lot of stuff when you start dealing with spirituality, you know, with consciousness, with you start to realize that there's like a certain it's like as within, so without kind of a thing, right? So you know, like my celibacy, which was about a year, almost a year, I actually made like major gains in the arena of the very thing that I was refraining from doing. You see what I'm saying? And so sometimes, basically, if we have issues with anything in life, a good counterintuitive way of proceeding after trying the most logical thing is to try the least logical thing. And sometimes that works. You know what I'm saying? So this is another plus of duality, is that we're only going to be on average 50% wrong about everything. So you know, you just work it in. Point says, at least you got saved so many paths in this industry, a lot of bad energies, especially from evil forces of the, you know, you just, it's like with that whole thing, I don't really want to talk about the industry too much, but the thing is like, you gotta hold the line, you know what I'm saying? Like, people will get away with what you let them get away with. You know what I'm saying? And that's pretty much a true blanket statement, but it's true. So it's it just ties into the same theme of everything else, is like detaching from the outcome. If you are going into something thinking that you need to, you know, that it's something to be won, or you know, some degree of outcome that you're seeking from it. Then, you know, none of us are fortune tellers, really. Like, life is always going to say, hold my beer. So, we just got to shift from doers into observers. Instead of, you know, being the subject. We look at everything abstractly, third party. You know what I'm saying? You tap into that part of yourself that's not the body, that's not the voice in your head, that's not your emotions. You know what I'm saying? And you just snap into that consciousness of your own absolute control. So you get to perceive this however that you want to perceive it, whatever this is, this moment that we're in right now. Like whatever I'm saying right now, you get to perceive it. This is like the downside to talking about stuff on the internet, right? You don't get to choose who's listening, so you have to be careful for what you say, because what you say and what somebody else understands can be two completely different things. You see, we can't even have a face-to-face conversation and guarantee that each other is going to derive the same exact meaning as which we are trying to illustrate when we're talking through words, right? And then adding the other variable of saying it on the internet where anyone can watch it and anyone can see it and you don't know anything about them, it makes the task incredibly much harder, right? And this can also be applied into what we're talking about, into the industry aforementioned. But, you know, the only thing that we control is ourselves. So we control our perception, right? And so everything is a choice. You know, whatever bad, like energy and exchange and all that's real. But like, you want to be a master of your energies, you just say, no, it's done. You eject that part of that energy, you rewrite over it, however you want to look at it, any analogy you want to use, you just decide, right? Because the thought that you're upset about something or that you got bad energy or something like that, that is something that exists within your ego. You know what I'm saying? Now, not to say that people can't do bad things or be bad energy or anything like that. They definitely can. But when somebody gives you something, it's you accepting it that makes it yours. Somebody can't give you something you don't accept, right? So I think that even ties us all the way back into our very, very, very first question. So, going in some nice circles here. It's good. It's a good analogy as well for how most things lead back to the beginning, right? So this is again what we were talking about before when we say, you know, balance is achieved, or that upon attaining consciousness that we have to figure out how to bring it here into the world, right? Which is much, much, much harder, easier said than done, right? So, another way to say it is, chop wood, carry water. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. You see what I'm saying? There's all kinds of stuff that you do in between those two things. We're not going to talk about what it is because it's different for every single person. No two people are going to do the same thing the exact same way. They can try, but it'll be a little different every time. So, seeking just means letting go. If you want to know the truth will be known. But you gotta let go of everything else. And that might make that might cause some weird situations for a lot of people. In fact, you don't know what would happen. You really don't know. Even if you tried to predict it, you'd be wrong. But fast forward, let's use this concept of time that everyone loves so much. Fast forward 5 years, 10 years. Where are you at then? You don't know that. You don't know the answer. You couldn't predict it for all the money in the world, you wouldn't be able to predict it perfectly accurately. So, you just give in. Give in to reality. The most obvious thing. You just don't know. Did you survive? Do you think you'd survive if you just said, you know what? Reset. Factory reset. That's done. Done everything. Everything's done. Reset. Restart. I'm just going to change my name, move to another country, leave everything I own behind. Whatever. Do you think you would still be alive in 5 years? Do you think that would lead to your termination? Probably not. You'd probably survive. Your life would be completely altered. You'd have no clue. Good, bad, somewhere in the middle. You have no clue what would happen. And there's absolutely no logic that tells you that over the course of long term, that whatever it is that it turned out would have been worse than what it would have been if you didn't. You just don't know. But it's human nature to try to make things better. You know what I'm saying? It's just a degree of awareness of that matters. You know what I'm saying? But the deck is stacked in your survival. And in fact, going on a completely more woo-woo esoteric level, it's so stacked in your corner if you do something crazy like that. It's like that movie, I watched it recently, it was so ridiculous, but it was so deep and full of symbology and everything like that. It was Everywhere, Everything, All at Once, if anyone's ever seen that. And it's just like the 5 paper cuts thing, you have to cut your thing or whatever, do all the weird things that are unlikely to happen. If they happen, it unlocks the new quantum reality. And it really is like that. So it's not a very deep philosophy to detach from the outcome, to detach from everything, because you're part of everything already. So all these attachments are not the real deal. You couldn't be detached. You should try to be as free moving as possible. You know what I'm saying? It's always been the most adaptive species that survived, and this is the same for people. The most adaptive people are the ones that, whatever, you know what I'm saying? The more flexibility you have, the more things you can act on. The least flexibility you have, the least amount of opportunities you can act on. So it's simple concept, right? And that's what minimalism and asceticism and things like this is what they accomplish. It's what they give you. The ultimate flexibility to do anything or nothing. The release, the actual to be in touch with reality. You know what I'm saying? Like if we know that our plans never go according to plan, then why do we care so much about our plans? There's so much worrying about the future and all this stuff. Like whatever it is that we're worried about, we don't know. It's completely a waste of energy. Instead, you could be operating on a level that's so high that everything just flows. And you do that by letting go of everything. There's nothing you need to learn or add on to your life. You know what I'm saying? Like, everything is, you need to shed that away. Some things are unsheddable, and you accommodate and you make things happen with that stuff. You accept that part of your burden or blessing, however you want to look at it. But less is more. Let's see. Even says, how would you pronounce my Swedish name? Consciousness begins in sharing one another our language. I suppose that is true. I would call you Ivan, apparently. Justice Laupu says, you seem to have lost your exuberance since the breakup. Hope your heart is content. You know, I'm super good. There was a certain cascade of events that was caused by that, where I kind of realized that that there was more work to do spiritually, that I had some deeper realizations surrounding that, where I decided that the situation was designed to direct me towards the idea that I needed to face my own darkness. Right? And it's helped me understand a lot of missing pieces from my earlier revelations. So it's been like a really positive part of my integration process. Now that it's been a while, like a year or something, since all that stuff happened. And, I have more or less benefited from it is in understanding. So, the exuberance is something which I have access to as well. But I really see these streams as sort of like a chronicling of this journey of consciousness. And so it loses the motivation to express that exuberance here all the time, because that would then become as if I'm trying to sell you something or whatever, rather than chronicling the reality of my personal spiritual process, which I'm just recording for the people. So that it's there. And I think that there's some type of really divinely crafted humor to whatever made me decide to do that, given that I had just spent over a decade gathering the interest of people whom were very much so on the opposite end of that spectrum with their focus, but whom had subconsciously been seeking something else the entire time without knowing it. So it's really funny, you know what I'm saying? Because the same energy that, you know, makes somebody perform well in my old industry is the same energy which creates the conditions to receive or to sync up with the greater part of the consciousness, which balances that equation. Let's see. Mimi Wunsch says God will deal with all these evil. Alright, sorry. Mark Travis says, "What is the purpose of life?" See, look it. I beat you to it. It's I'm chronicling an experience so that people may benefit from that in whatever way that they might choose to do so, if any at all. Mark Travis says, "I exist for my family and friends. I'm retired." And what else is there? You know what I mean? Like, there's people around you. We don't have to worry too much about. So nowadays, we don't even know who's real. You might be talking to somebody for hours. It might turn out to be a chat bot. You don't even know. It's always best to operate within your field. You know, and family and friends are more often than not the first layer of that field. So I think it's great. Mimi Wunsch says, Alice Cooper came to know Jesus as his personal savior, and Alice Cooper will go to heaven when Jesus comes back again or when he passes away. Well, good for Alice Cooper. That's cool. Okay, so Justicia, who we talked to earlier, who lost her virginity fairly late in life due to her own choices, which is interesting thing because it's fairly uncommon nowadays. So backstory for new people here, but Justicia says, I recommend females waiting as long as they can. The experience can be far below expectations. Experience can turn into a negative one in a matter of seconds. I often feel like my life partner shouldn't be my lover and vice versa. And she continues to say, will you get back? Okay, no. So, you know, all that's true. And, it's is regarding the life partner shouldn't be my lover and vice versa thing is everything should just be what it is. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, there's many different forms of communication, right? And the one which is most commonly and easy to misunderstand is the one that we happen to use the most, which is verbal communication, right? Another one that can be misunderstood commonly is like body language. And so, you know, things cease to become divine when we name them. You see what I'm saying? Or not entirely, because everything is, but you get them. But it when we name something, we do anything that we're naming, we're making it less than what it is. We've chosen a definition for something which is completely more than that, and we name it, right? So, and a really, really unfortunate and problematic example of that is in relationships with other people. That we entitle people. We say this person is this and this person is this. But the reality is that no matter what you choose to call somebody or how you choose to describe them or how you choose to entitle them or so on and so forth, is that they're going to be whoever they want to be. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have no say in this. Anything that you want, which they give you, is, you know, it's an agreement. You see what I'm saying? Everything is agreements between people. Doesn't mean that there's anything binding them to that, right? And so you can call someone all kinds of things. You might call someone something really unnice, and they might still choose to be your best friend. You know what I'm saying? Like, because they're choosing that. They're choosing to be something good for you. And somebody can also, likewise, you could call them your best friend. You could call them your husband, your wife, whatever you want. And they could be your worst enemy. You know what I'm saying? Like, they definitely have every opportunity to do that because they're on the inside. You see what I'm saying? So, you naming someone something, entitling someone something doesn't mean anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, someone a life partner, someone a lover, someone a whatever, they're whatever you mutually agreed to be. You know? And for sure, people agree to things that they don't like. You know what I'm saying? But they balance those scales. You know what I'm saying? Even in really bad situations, like people, you know, choosing between any two things is a choice, you know. Even if it's a coerced choice, for example. So I guess it's really everything is personal, you know? We can't expect that any blanket information likewise can also be true for everybody. So, you know, while definitely when we give advice, we try to give advice that is accurate, right? So if you're talking to a lot of people, you're trying to get the majority. You're never going to get 100%, right? But everything is personal. There's nothing that is 100% unless it's balanced. You know what I'm saying? So let me see. Someone's point says, "Do you want children one day? Would you bring a child into the world we live in?" You know, I don't know that I would probably seek out to um, do it. But it's definitely something that could happen, I guess. But it wouldn't happen likely because, well, a bunch of reasons that I probably shouldn't talk about right now. Said Alaskan Apple says, "Damn, knocked him off the Gnostic propaganda script. Oh well. This is the theology taught by grifters, rats, and snakes. This helps them settle into their ways. Hedonism and subversion changes towards sin and grants you freedom." Okay. No, no thing. Well, this Alaskan Apple doesn't agree with what we're talking about. Let's see. Cansey says, "When your life is most encouraging to your faith right now?" I mean, just acceptance of reality. Like, you know, I don't remember every moment of my past, you know, but I probably have forgotten more things than many people ever experience. In terms of, you know, unusual experiences. But regardless of how turbulent my life has been, everything has always worked out. Always just somehow, you know, continues against all odds. So I take that reality and I balance it with the fact of there are so many things which I never would have thought were possible, which I have personally witnessed with my own eyes. And I mean that both spiritually, metaphysically, all that. And I also mean that totally 3D, pure statistics, pure odds. You know what I mean? On every level. So I can't conclusively, know anything other than the fact that I don't know. I don't know nothing. Even after having experienced so much things, really nothing can surprise me anymore. Like, I've already been surprised so much times. I've already, like, if I tell the story of my life, like, it's like, people can't even come up with fiction like this. You know what I'm saying? It's not like a brag or an ego thing. It's just, it's, it's hard to put into words. You know what I mean? And I believe most people, if you're really paying attention and you start considering that maybe nothing in the world is a coincidence, that every thing is perfectly somehow part of the script, then what could go wrong besides everything? But you know what I'm saying? It's not about your perception. It's about well, I guess it is about your perception. So, whoops. Looks like I almost made it to the bottom of the chat. Yay. User said, oh, wait. Oh, wait. Somebody else's point says, don't you ever think about fatherhood? Having a child is not something you can control. As a young nurse, I can tell you absolutely no birth control method is 100% effective except celibacy. And yeah, I just stay in the moment, I don't do anything as reckless as create another human life on purpose. You know what I'm saying? If it's something that happened, if it's something that happens, it's kind of like, in my view, do your absolute best with that, because it's the biggest responsibility ever. But why do that to yourself if you have a choice not to, unless you just really feel like, that's the best thing that you can do for humanity. In which case, do it wholeheartedly and as well as you can. But for me personally, I can't logically look for a reason why I would do that intentionally. User something says, have you ever felt like you wanted to be normal and nobody understood you? A lot of countries limit the amount of kids you can have because, like China, because people can't take care of their kids. Yeah, I mean, the thing is like doing stuff like that, population control, is that, balance is always achieved. The thing is like, you can either try to control it like as we go, or there'll be a correction. You know what I'm saying? It's like everything else. Like, if the population gets too big, it will reset. So there's really no real solution. It's just where do you want your numbers skewed? You want them in the front or you want them in the back? You want big numbers with little numbers, or little numbers with big numbers, or two equal sized numbers? You know what I mean? Like, what kind of standard of deviation would you like? You know what I'm saying? And that's just how this world is. So, you know, that's part of the lesson we come to accept. And regarding the first part of that question, we're almost done, you guys. Have you ever felt like you wanted to be normal and nobody understood you? No, not really. I mean, I have realized that nobody understands me, but they don't need to either. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, the whole point of existence is that, you know, you have to understand yourself. You know what I mean? Trying to understand someone else is, you know, it's just impossible. There's no point in trying. It's very egotistical to think that you could do something so great without having experienced their life yourself. But, you know, it's a big part of the process to let go of the idea that anyone is going to understand you. Let's see. Points says, I'm a woman, so can't think like you as a man. Sometimes I have extreme baby fever. It's like an inexplicable craving. I mean, as a woman, really crave motherhood, even though I am still relatively young, and there is a weird feminine feeling, and that maybe only women feel. Now, I would say no, men definitely have an attachment to procreation, not just the act of that goes into procreation. You know what I'm saying? So, the thing is like learning to detach from the concept that these things are you is a big part of what we're talking about. You aren't having these urgings. Your body is having these urgings. You see what I'm saying? So, you know, we really want to stay in contact with the part of us that observes all things, all your sensations, all your emotions, all your thoughts, all so on and so forth. It's all streaming up to something that is the real you, right? And when you understand that's the microcosm, you can now understand the macrocosm of, you know what I'm saying, repeat that structure, and, you know what I'm saying, Noise says, being a mother is the most precious feeling I've ever experienced. Point says, I agree, but the mother carries the child within her for 9 months, so fatherhood is different. I don't have children yet, is just an intuition. Well, the thing is there's multiple levels to this. Like, you know what I'm saying? If you want to look at the normal mainstream society of a way of a man and a woman, right? Then, of course, it's not equal. There's no balance. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's clear that there's it's very heavy to the woman's side regarding the experience. But at the same token, this is where, you know, sometimes society doesn't agree with the underlying fundamental reality of duality, which is that there's always balance, right? So on the man's side, a man could technically, let's say that we didn't have the normal accepted mainstream way of operating a marriage, right? And a man had multiple wives, he would be able to be having multiple instances of this experience that he's having simultaneously, right? So it's just like a thing, you know what I mean? But anyways, I don't know what the point of that is, but we made it to the very end. Thank you for the laughing disco, ABJB. And we made it to the bottom chat, and I'm done. That was a long one. Carl says, are you in the strong favor of monogamy? Probably, I mean, I wouldn't say that, no. I think that there's definitely things to be said for it that are positive. There's definitely a positive argument there, but it is very out of balance situation with the natural way that life is structurally set up. So there's an argument for both. I definitely see that it certainly is the easier way, but there's many paths. So let's have it at that. Anyways, that being said, I love you all. Oh wait, we got one more. Point says, I think polygamy is more normal for a man. I'm a girl, by the way. I wouldn't mind myself hypothetically husband having other wives. And see, I think that it's also inherently more acceptable mentally because, like, to both sides as well, not in every case, of course, but it's a little bit easier. Like, most men couldn't wrap their head around the same thing, and their biology doesn't agree with them doing it either, because as we mentioned before, you can only be pregnant one at a time. So, you know, it doesn't really facilitate, you know what I mean? Like, there's balance in everything, and that's the way it all works. Anyways, much love, everybody.